All right. So I am so happy to have you join us today. I am super excited to just chat about you, chat about the company that you work for. But we're going to really get into it today. We've sort of connected prior and laid out a little framework for this conversation. And I have really good feelings about this one. So first and foremost, I would love for you to just tell our audience in your own words a little bit about your professional journey.
Sure. So I'm Brit Starr. I'm the EVP at Tribe Dynamics currently, but that has been, on the heels of about 20 years of journey. That really, I feel like, has been rooted in storytelling. So I have a little bit of a diverse background. I started my career in nonprofit, working for a social service agency, doing donor outreach and relationship management. Again, like, how do you bring the story of your constituents and the people that you're servicing to donors in a way that's like connected and compelling and authentic? And then from there, moved to the agency world, which I spent about 10 years working at the agency world on really amazing, rich, creative brands that I think really kind of set themselves apart based on how true they were to themselves, and how they really wanted the stories they told through their creative, through their media, through their channels to reflect that. Got to work on really fun things like beer and food and music. So, not a terrible way to spend your time day to day. Those are things that I'm incredibly passionate about. But this was also kind of early days of digital advertising. And so got to kind of go on that journey with those brands as well, in terms of how do you really leverage the internet and social media to again connect more directly with your customers in a way that is compelling and authentic. And then from there, took a little bit of a hiatus. I took about a year off and traveled the world, like put everything in storage, uprooted, no plans, a savings account that dwindled quickly. And then just traveled and came back and landed in San Francisco. And really from there, again, kind of took on roles within the brand side of marketing, helping to bring kind of craft consumer brands to market. I worked for a craft coffee company here in the Bay Area. I consulted with a couple of consumer tech firms like Trulia and Lyft. And again, I think really consistent questions that they were trying to answer. It's how do I connect with my consumers in a way that is meaningful and authentic and innovative. And one day I got a cold call from one of the co-founders of Tribe Dynamics, who was looking to fill a role that was completely wrong for me to start with. But the conversation itself just was like right place, right time. So many of these questions that my clients were asking, I felt like Tribe Dynamics had a really unique and innovative approach to answering. And as a marketer, I loved the idea of being able to help people like me kind of fill in the gaps and really understand the direction that marketing is going, and how those kind of sources of authority and credibility and those storytelling channels are evolving over time. So this is where I've been for the last 5 years this month, actually, and have enjoyed every minute of it.
I love it. I love your story. It's a little unique. I love a good unique story. And I think it's so interesting, that last piece that you were mentioning, because like you can have all the great storytelling, all of these great pieces together, but like you need the support, you need the tools to be able to sort of take it to the next level. I'm curious. So you said that someone cold called you from Tribe Dynamics. Did you ever dig into that story? Like, how did they connect with you? Where did that come from? How was that connection made? Do you know?
Yeah, so I think because I was consulting at the time, I had a resume up on Angel List or floating around. I'm sure it was older, and it struck a chord with one of the co-founders. And so I think, to his credit, he took the initiative and was really trying to like personally source talent for the company. And that's actually something he still to this day does, especially for specific roles. And so it was honestly like again, a phone call that I picked up, and again, to the company and the co-founder Connor's credit, it hooked me. I got to get interested enough to continue conversations with the rest of the team and learn a little bit more about what the company was doing. And yeah, here we are today. The rest is history.
I love that. That's such a cool story. I'm all about for like unique connections. And you mentioned like innovativeness. Like I love all that stuff. That's so cool. So look, we heard a little bit about your professional journey, where you came from to how you got to where you are today. I always like to get to know you a little bit more personally before we like dive headfirst into like the influencer marketing specific questions, which like we all want to know about and talk about, but I also want to get to know you better. So we're going to do a few rapid fire get to know you questions. Are you ready, Brit?
I'm ready.
All right. So question number one, after COVID and, vacation and travel opens up again, where are you headed? What's your favorite vacation spot?
Oh man, yeah. To your point, anywhere after this year, I definitely have the travel bug. Travel is a huge part of my life. I think I mentioned, I took a year off to travel, and that was, not the beginning, but definitely a continuation of like always putting travel in the center. It's funny, priorities change. So I feel like our first trips and vacations are going to be really around the people that we're going to see versus the places we're going to go visit. So get family, get friends, like reestablish those like physical connections that we've been missing so much of. And then I don't know, I'd love a little beach in my life.
100% bring them to the beach. Just bring all those people that you love to the beach. What is your favorite app? And I'm not only limiting it to social media apps, but just apps on your phone. It could be social media. It could not be. What's your favorite?
That is a really good question. Okay, so definitely the one I spend the most time on, I'm sure like many people, is Instagram. Function, the one that has been like surprisingly useful in my life, has been a scanner app. It's called Genius Scan. I don't have a printer, and so having the ability to scan in, print a PDF has been like weirdly a lifesaver, both in my professional and personal life, as I've like signed contracts and leases and whatnot. And then, oh man, I love photography and taking pictures, playing around with pictures. Visco was like a huge part of my life for a long time. Not as much anymore, but yeah, playing around with the filters and making sure you're putting good stuff out.
I love that. Are you a Canva consumer at all? Like, are you ever on Canva?
I'm not, but it comes very recommended a lot.
I bring it up only because I just got an email from them a couple days ago that they like launched this like new filter feature. And I was like, oh, I wonder if all those like tried and true like Visco and like Snapseed and like all those great apps, like I wonder if they've got some competition now. Yeah, those are awesome suggestions. I will definitely like a good scan, with your phone app. So underestimated how clutch that can be sometimes. So no, I love that. What would you say is your biggest fear?
Oh, okay. So I have a very irrational fear of submarines.
Wait, what? Tell me more.
It's very strange. It's not being inside of one. Like, it's not the typical claustrophobia. It is the idea of one coming up from underneath me. Again, completely irrational. When in any normal life would this ever happen? And interestingly, I'm also very comfortable in the water. I love to scuba dive, but it's just this, I don't know. Oh, I think it's maybe large things in water, cargo ships, cruise ships, things like that. Not really cup of tea.
No, that's so fascinating. Do you know if there's like a name to this? If it were phobia level, not saying that you're at phobia level, is there like a name to that?
I mean, not that I've looked into, but I'm sure there's a name for everything. I mean, I have a coworker who has a fear of buttons. And there is a name that I cannot recall, but there's a name for that.
Thank God you're not fearful of buttons. Oh my gosh, that's wild. Okay, that's a great answer. What makes you laugh the most?
Oh man, I love to laugh. So everything. I also love to cry. So I like cry in commercials that I'm watching, or when I see an athlete achieve something amazing. Like it's like the tears come on really easily. Laughing the most, probably. I don't know. I have a toddler. He's hilarious. He probably makes me laugh pretty hard, pretty consistently today.
Oh, how old is he?
He's 18 months.
That's such a good age.
Yeah.
They are funny. It's so good when your kids are like really, they've got these personalities. Like they're the funniest source of, they're hilarious. I mean, they can be hilarious. A great source of laughter.
Personalities and no filter combined with like burgeoning communication skills is hilarious.
100%. And my last question for this get to know you section, I feel like we've definitely gotten to know you. What is the best age to be?
Oh man. Okay. This is such a cop out, but I love the age that I'm at now. I'm in my like mid upper 30s, and I feel like, I love my family. I love my life. I'm old enough to where I'm able to make choices about my life with a little more flexibility. I have that luxury. I will say that like the sweet spot of having like achieved a bit more in your career, earned a bit more to give you that financial flexibility, but not having the personal responsibilities and obligations is also like a nice age. So for me, that would have been like 28.
So 28 and then the age you are right now. Yeah. Those are perfect answers. So let's dive into, now that we've definitely gotten a better sense of like who you, Brit, are. I want to know about your thoughts on influencer marketing, sort of like where it's going. But first and foremost, let's talk about your company. So Tribe Dynamics, look, I'll be honest, like there are a lot of tech companies that have been in the space for a while. There's new ones coming around every day. Like you said, though, in the very beginning of this conversation, like I could not agree with you more, is that influencer marketers in general, agencies, like people who are in this space, like you need tools. Like you can't do it on your own. And it's certainly not going to be the best work if you don't have all these really interesting dynamic tools to be able to lean on. And so talk to me about how your company is different.
Yeah, I think it's a great question. And I think you're absolutely right. The space is, I think, quite misunderstood and noisy on both sides. I think influencer marketing in and of itself is incredibly misunderstood in terms of what it is, the function it serves, how we as consumers engage with content creators to get, recommendations, but also establish relationships with people we admire and aspire to be like or align with our value set. And then also on the support side, the types of tools that you would need to run kind of an effective program for your brand is a really difficult decision process for brands. And so I think, what sets us apart is, first and foremost, we're not right for everybody. We are very much built for brands who are passion driven, who have large organic fanships online that create organic content about them. So we're talking about categories like beauty, fashion, fitness, travel, food, entertainment. Again, these like conversations that exist, whether brands are engaging in them or not. It's just kind of the fabric that we like to talk about as humans, the things that interest us and that we spend our time doing. So we're really built for brands that have that scale of conversation, and for brands that have that scale of conversation, the things that are the most important to them are having a way to track and especially measure the entirety of that content, right? To have like the visibility of how are people creating content about me? What is the conversation about my brand, my products, my, competitive set, my category? What does that look like? And then how can I actually identify the community at scale? Again, we're talking, hundreds, thousands of content creators that our clients engage with on a regular basis. How do I identify and prioritize those relationships? And then I think most importantly, how can a tool like Tribe Dynamics really help me do all the things so that my team can focus on the human aspects, the relationship aspects, the things that are really that really matter and that are really important to building effective relationships? That takes time and energy. And so if we can come in and help with all the rest of it, right? Making it, again, easy to identify, surface, prioritize, and ultimately measure these individual creators and the community at large, then the brands can spend their time doing what they do best, which is building relationships, building great products, connecting the two, and doing that in really interesting, creative ways.
I love that. I'd love to even get specific, like let's get granular about it too, because I everything that you're saying is like the powerful part of influencer marketing. It is equally, the relationship building is huge. So to think that there's like a tool to be able to like take the other analytical, like data driven part like off of your plate so that the humans can establish those relationships and build upon them, that's humongous. But in addition, like I want to dig into like the data and the analytical side that you guys are so focused on, because just a quick peek at your website and like that's the highlight, right? And like again, like that's the engine that makes the car go. Yeah. And I'm such a data geek, so and I also just think that in order to have our industry really, really thrive, we have to be able to not only identify like the important data sets, but also analyze them and compare the right ones to each other and really do intelligent things with the data, not just keep it surface level. So all that being said, I'd love to get a peek behind the curtain a little bit at like what types of data are you seeing come through that's like the most important, that's really like moving the needle for people, like maybe interesting comparisons. Like talk to us a little bit more about that in detail.
Yeah, absolutely. It's such a good question. And I also agree with everything you said. Metrics matter, but metrics that don't inform decisions or drive actions are not helpful. And so making sure that you have access to the right set of metrics, that those metrics are credible and trustworthy, and again, ultimately used to inform decisions is absolutely important. I think the things that are setting the best in class programs today are a few things. So being able to kind of look beyond surface level metrics like follower count, engagement rate, et cetera, right? Like thinking a bit differently from kind of traditional casting and influencer marketing is not media buying, right? You're not buying a platform, you're building a relationship. And so much of that is about the long game versus the short game. So what's really, I think, changing for our clients is that they're really focusing on influencer retention and relationship retention. And that's something that we allow them to measure in the software so that they can understand over time how their community is changing, who they're retaining, over, each month, each 6 months, each year. Like these relationships have tenure. And so focusing on retention as a core component of your program goals is absolutely setting apart the brands that we see, driving their top line numbers today. I think the other thing that's really important is to look at, we talk a lot about kind of, total impact, impact, total reach, if you will. But I think for us, it's really important, and for our clients, it's really important to look at how your share of the conversation amongst a relative community and a relative group of competitors is changing over time. Am I commanding or garnering more of the conversation than I was, less of the conversation? And how can I use that over time to really understand kind of where I sit in my competitive set, and also what the opportunities are to continue to optimize and improve. So again, looking away from those like kind of top line, bigger is better numbers, and looking at the nuance of how your conversation, your community is changing over time. And again, specifically around retention, how much of your community are you able to retain through those relationship building, aspects that we talked about earlier? And how is that impacting your total share of the conversation?
Well, that's so interesting because, like, look, on the platform side, people talk all the time about like, oh, it's like not about vanity metrics anymore, and it's so much about these like deeper metrics that we're looking at, are more like sophisticated ones, but also just in terms of like the brand or like your own business, which of course your brand is your business. I love that you're saying that there has to be a focus. There should be a focus on like just like more interesting data sets, like exactly what you're saying. And like over time and being able to like test and learn a little bit and say like, oh, okay, we're going to analyze this like in depth, like once every 3-6 months, whatever your cadence is. But then we're going to like shift things depending on what we see. And then we're going to implement maybe a different strategy, and then we're going to listen again, and we're going to see like how does that inform everything. And like there's not enough hours in a day, and in a lot of instances there are few people to be able to either focus on it or know what to focus on. So I just appreciate that you guys are that partner, like that tool to be able to do what a lot of us know needs to be done, but doesn't necessarily put the focus into it.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting because you're right. It's, depending on where you are as a brand, your goals are going to be quite different. If I'm a younger brand who's just starting out in terms of kind of really actively building and engaging my influencer community, my creator community, I'm probably going to be focused on really identifying my core community, growing that community over time. That's a different set of metrics than say I'm a more established, mature brand who's really looking to like not only defend the territory that I've carved out, but like continue to engage, which is a really difficult task. I mean, brands like Benefit Cosmetics, for example, that continue to grow and expand their footprint and kind of engage with influencers on a global scale in exponentially impactful ways, that's hard work. And so I think that it's really important to know that based on where you are as a company, your goals are going to be different. So your metric set's going to be a bit different. But again, these like fundamentals stay the same. And I think the challenges that our clients face are really consistent across the board, despite their size, scale, kind of where they are on the curve in terms of their tenure and influencer marketing, fighting for headcount and budget and the resources you need to do the job you need to do, getting buy-in at the top levels to get those resources and budgets and philosophically align as an organization around, again, what is often quite misunderstood. I think that's a big issue, I think, for our clients, continues to be, especially as influencer marketing, starts to really take its place as a core marketing tool in the arsenal of marketing, which means it's commandeering more budgets, more headcount. It's collaborating and merging with other teams in interesting ways. And so, what used to be this kind of like arm of PR is really a core function of marketing today, and the primary function of marketing for a lot of our clients. And that kind of visibility, that platform, will get a little bit more scrutiny. So you have to have goals and KPIs, you have to be able to measure progress, and you have to be able to kind of vie for additional resources. And so I love the ability that we have to help our clients do that, to help them build the case for why this works and why doing, more or better or bringing in additional team members, like how can you actually make the case for that in a way that is connected to how it impacts your brand and your business.
And so, I mean, it does, like with all that you're describing, it definitely sounds more than what I've seen in the marketplace thus far. So, like, I'd be curious, like, if somebody was, listening to this podcast or taking a demo with you guys or just like seeing you out there in market, like, what would you say is Tribe Dynamics' superpower? Like, if you could like drill it down to like your customers, like, across the board would say like these 2 or 3 things, what would those be?
I think our content tracking is better than anything else that's out there. So the ability to capture content in relatively real time across a myriad of channels so that brands have full visibility, and then apply metrics to that individual content, individual creator, and community at large that help those brands actually make decisions on a day-to-day basis in terms of how they need to be focusing their energies and efforts. I think that's really what sets us apart. A lot of our clients are really excited about some of our coverage updates. We're tracking Instagram stories, TikTok, these areas that are incredibly important to their programs and to the way their communities are evolving over time. And so being able to work with them on that as these emerging channels, really take their place has been pretty exciting.
So I love that, and such a good segue to the next part of our convo. I want to talk about like new platforms and new features a little bit. I mean, when we're recording this podcast, this is the week that Instagram announced there's finally analytics on Instagram Reels and Lives, which has been like so anticipated for such a long time. We like announced this in our Facebook group, of course, which are people who are hiring influencers, and they're like, oh, thank God, like people, it's interesting the response that I heard. A couple people were like, thank God, like people won't be able to charge, higher than what is necessary, their content reach is, the rates will be more appropriately aligned with like what you're gonna get in return, because now it's not a secret. It's like, I can see what you're commanding. I can see how many people you're reaching, engaging with, etc., with Reels, with IG Lives. And I can't believe it took them so long to be able to roll this out. I just want to hear from you, like, I don't know, new platforms that you're seeing people be most engaged in. Like, what are the hot platforms and features that are like, that you're hearing about these days?
Yeah, I mean, TikTok is the obvious one. I think hugely important across the board. We did a survey of our clients 2 months back now, and I think upwards of 75+% of them confirmed that TikTok is a central part of their strategy moving forward. So it is definitely, I think, a channel that we'll see continue to increase in importance in influencer marketing, and it's also, I think, part of the reason for that is not only it's like, crazy momentum, but also the fact that it's a fairly distinct creator community. I mean, there's so much overlap across the other channels, which definitely has its benefits, but I think TikTok has a distinct creator set. And so brands are really trying to navigate the best way to engage with those communities, those creators, and really build out a presence over time. We saw the amazing ability of some early movers and early adopters across other channels in terms of brand presence and the early brand stories like NYX Cosmetics, Anastasia Beverly Hills. I mean, these brands that were like, almost because they had to, but also because they knew that this community is so integral in the success of their brands. Like, they were able to achieve incredible success early on, based on their understanding of that landscape. And so I think TikTok will be the same. I've had conversations with brands about kind of launching new lines that are more like TikTok specific. And it's just, I think it's gonna continue to command a lot of attention. I think video content in general is something obviously not new, but it is something that continues to increase in importance over time. Anything from like substantive, long form content on YouTube, which I think is dramatically underrated and undervalued. So incredibly important if you talk about like the quality of that content, the time consumers spend with it. I mean, it's just incredible. All the way into like live social selling, which is something that's getting a ton of buzz right now.
Yeah.
So,
all of those. Yeah. All of those things are, I'm hearing these as well. Like just the last thing that you spoke about, like live social selling, I wonder if like, I mean, this is my analysis of it for what it's worth. I'd love to hear your 2 cents. Like, when you said perfectly, you're like, video is nothing new, but like there's still very much a conversation about the importance of video. I just think that like people are getting inundated, like left, right, all over the place with so much content that it's really like such a fight to be able to like capture people's attentions, especially in a world where it's saturated with things coming at them. So like, yeah, video content is like the most compelling to most people. I'm personally like I really enjoy audio. So like some of these social audio apps are really interesting. But on a platform like TikTok, that makes no sense. On a platform like Facebook, it doesn't make sense. Like, well, Facebook is sort of getting into bed with Spotify a little bit. So I don't know. There's still very much a place for video. And I wonder if it's just because it's sort of like the most compelling type of content. TikTok is, absolutely here to stay. It's super interesting. I don't know if you heard the news last week, how like the CEO of ByteDance announced that he's stepping down. Really interesting to see like what will come of that. But I don't think it will impact how like huge TikTok is in influencer marketing and then the strategies moving forward. The last thing I want to ask you about that, what I heard you say was that TikTok, like 75% or so of the people that you're in contact with in the survey, I guess, were saying that it's like the central point of their influencer marketing strategy. Did you mean to say that? Or is it just like a part of their influencer strategy? Because that's something new I haven't really heard, especially 75%.
Yeah, I think it's pretty overwhelming. It is a central part of their strategy. So I think the way brands are looking at it, at least from our experience, are a major growth driver and channel. And again, kind of a more nascent channel that they're wanting to invest in now so that they can really understand the best ways to grow over time. Instagram and YouTube still, make up the lion's share of earned media value, which is kind of the top line metric that we track and use to kind of quantify the value of the content that's created about a brand online. Instagram making up the lion's share of that, with YouTube being, from a quality of content standpoint, incredibly important. But yeah, TikTok I think is going to be that's the trifecta right now for most of the brands we work with, again, across lifestyle categories. And it makes sense, right? It's where consumers are. It's where the creator communities are, and it's where you're really able to engage with creator communities at scale. I think the other thing that you mentioned that we're actually like definitely seeing in our data is this kind of increased or heightened barrier to entry in terms of like we're inundated with content all the time. And what we've seen in our data is that both creators and consumers are starting to be significantly more intentional about the people they follow, the brands they follow, the content they create. So we've seen branded content on channels like Instagram actually go down. But I think it's not a watering down of that content. It is it's a focus, right? It's I'm going to talk about the brands that align with my value set, that I really connect with. And then as consumers, we're seeing similar trends in the way consumers follow influencers. I might follow fewer influencers, but I'm really engaged and connected with the ones that I choose to continue a relationship with. So I think we're seeing some of those trends play out in this kind of concentration of energy and efforts around brands and influencers that, again, really connect and align with the identities of consumers.
So interesting. I absolutely echo all of those things, and it's just super fascinating to hear. So I appreciate that so much. I want to hear about a little bit about your predictions. It's predictions time. So, look, like things, one of the most consistent things about social media is how often it's changing and evolving. And if like you're not the type of person that likes change, this probably isn't the industry for you. It happens so often. I want to hear a little bit about your predictions and the rest of 21 in terms of influencer tech specifically.
Yep. So I'm going to start my answer with a different take on your question. I'm going to talk about the things that won't change, that we've seen, over the last, since we've been around, almost 10 years, that we've seen stay the same. And it's kind of what we've staked our claim around, and what we continue to do, which is organic content matters. I think when a lot of people think about influencer marketing, they think about pay to play relationships, and what we saw 8 years ago and what we're seeing today is that organic content is still the majority of the content created by the creator community. In the same way, if you look at a magazine, you're not going to read something that's wall-to-wall ads. You need editorial content to really build the relationship, earn the trust of your community over time, and really just talk about what is going on in your life. And so organic content always matters. It always has. It always will. Creators, influencers, not going anywhere. We get asked that all the time. Like, is influencer marketing falling off a cliff? Absolutely not. Consumers want their information via credible third parties, and this is where we go for that information. So I think that is here to stay. And I think that the content that's being created, some of the trends that we're seeing are here to stay as well. So again, like compelling visual content, we've seen a ton of shift from it needing to be really kind of like obvious and in your face to an increasing tolerance for educational content, long form content, content that kind of takes weeks to play out over time, right? If you think about skincare and how massively skincare has increased over the past 5-6 years, a lot of that is being driven by this increased tolerance for educational content online. Like, I want to know how it works and the efficacy of this product, and I'm willing to put in the time to understand that. In terms of what will change, actually, one more thing that won't change. We very much are built for brands, and we do that because we believe that the best relationships are between a brand and the influencers that support them, right? The brand and its creator community. And I think that's something that will continue to be a vital part of building those relationships. Like, creators love these brands and products, and so getting to work directly with them is incredibly important and creates an entirely different type of relationship. Things that will change, other than like everything, obviously, as we know from this year. I think that content format channels, like, we'll continue to see new channels emerge. We've had clients already start asking us about Twitch, and other streaming channels that, I think will have been incredibly important in certain categories, and we'll see some more diversification there. Ton of crossover in terms of the content that creators are creating. So this idea of like a fashion influencer or a beauty influencer, I think, is becoming more blurred over time. I think we'll continue to see that in the near term. And it's going to be important for tools to continue to help to surface and help people understand that. And then, on the tool side, I think we're going to see not necessarily consolidation, but I think that because there are so many tools out there that do very kind of play a distinct role in program development, analytics, execution, CRM, et cetera, I think we're going to really start to see a couple of players stand out in terms of the ability for them to offer more full program support within one app or one piece of software. And we've seen that happen in other industries, and I think we're there as an industry as well.
That would be nice.
Yeah.
That would be really nice. I think that like in my own personal journey for, the best tools, and whether it's like entrepreneurial tools or like influencer marketing specific tools, like I've said many times on this podcast, I just don't think there's really like a one tool that does it all. And I don't think that'll really be, I don't actually think that should be the case, but that's a whole other conversation. But I do hope that there are more that just add more and more tools to their toolbox and more resources under one umbrella, because just from an efficiency standpoint, and like streamlining communications and like for so many positive things, like that would be a great addition or a solid change.
I think that's exactly right. It's, you can't be all things for everyone, but you can be the right things for the people that you're a good fit for. And so I think that for us, again, figuring out like, what does a full program look like for a passion-driven brand with a scaled community? What does that like relationship management look like? What kinds of, content permissions and rights would you be looking for? How do you manage the contracts and things like that? Like, again, for those programs, how can we help fill in some of the gaps? And that's at least the long-term approach that we're taking, is just really understanding what our clients need and building for them. Versus trying to kind of, always go after white space that may or may not, be the best fit for our business.
Definitely got to serve the special crew, like your crew. I love that so much. We are coming around to like one of our final questions. It's been such a pleasure chatting with you. I've so enjoyed this. I would ask you a slightly more personal question. Again, like getting to know you. What would you tell your younger self that would have given you either a personal or professional advantage today?
Ooh, that's such a good question. Honestly, I think that the importance of exposure and building a network and seeking out both personal and professional mentors is something I wish I would have done at a younger age. I think, that often comes within your career, right? I started a job, I have a manager that I love, I'm going to keep in contact with them. But there are so many ways, this your organization and this conversation included, like there are so many ways to connect with interesting people that can augment your life and career. And so I would tell my younger self to do that. Like, don't be afraid to ping somebody on LinkedIn and be like, hey, I'd love to catch up on Zoom or grab a coffee, hopefully soon, if you're in the same location, and have those conversations. You just never know what doors it's going to open up, what paths it will take you down, and ultimately the value that it'll add. And then, later on you can do the same for others. So I think there's just huge value in that. And I definitely think there's no too early to start at all.
Best answer ever. So look, it's been such a pleasure chatting with you today. I have a feeling that lots of people listening or tuning in will definitely want to get in touch and just connect with you, take that next step and reach out. So what's the best way for people watching today and listening to get in touch?
Yeah, please ping me on LinkedIn. You can email me. I'm happy to share my email address. But yeah, those are probably the two best ways to reach out directly. And yeah, happy to connect with anyone.
Fantastic. And we will list all of those specifics in the show notes. Brits, it's been such a pleasure. I so appreciate you hanging out today. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me and for all you do.